Hello everyone, my name is Emily and welcome to another video on Emily XO. If you are new here, welcome. As I said, my name is Emily. I put up various beauty and lifestyle videos, and if you are a returning subscriber, welcome back. So it has been a hot minute since I have posted a video on this channel. It's only been 3 weeks. It feels a little bit longer than that, but the last video I had for you guys was actually the June book of the month video, and now we are discussing July's book of the month video today. I am really sorry for not posting. I really wanted to try and get better about being active on this YouTube channel, and then between the month of July just getting super duper busy and me feeling creatively and mentally drained, I was really struggling. I really just couldn't come up with anything that I felt good about filming and creating, so mentally I just wasn't in a good place for the month of July. Especially towards the end of the month, I became very anxious and very irritable pretty much every day. I'm feeling a lot better now though. I don't know if it was just something with the season slowly starting to change, or I don't look a lot into astrology and everything and zodiacs and all that, but I was reading a lot about retrograde and something about stuff shifting and a large reset for a lot of people in life. So I don't know, I don't necessarily follow that stuff, but I don't necessarily discard it as not real either, so maybe that's part of what was going on. I'm not really sure. I also just fell into this loop where my upload days have been Sunday, but Sundays are not going to work for me anymore. I'm going to be I'm gonna hope for a Monday, Tuesday upload is kind of my goal right now. I'm gonna play with it a little bit, but it came down to the point where my weekends got really busy, and if I wanted to upload on a Sunday, I had to film on Saturday because during the week, the work week, I don't have a lot of time to film. So I would try and film on Saturday, and then I'd have to, sit down, actually film the video, get it all edited, get it all set so it could go up at 7 o'clock on Sunday night, and that just wasn't leaving me enough time because our weekends got very busy. A lot of our friends are home from college, so they're home for the summer. We've been spending a lot of time with them. Summer weekends typically are the time where people go out and they do things. And so I just got really caught up in life, and I couldn't manage the time to squeeze in filming on top of all the fun stuff I was doing, but also just the life stuff I was doing, keeping the apartment clean, cooking, spending just time for myself because like I said, mentally I wasn't in a good place. But I think if we switch to a Monday, Tuesday upload, that's going to be a little bit better because that gives me Saturday/Sunday to film and edit and get it all set. I'm also going to try really hard to work on pre-recording more so I have stuff ready to go for you guys. I already have the next video pre-recorded and I just have to edit it and get it ready to go. I don't know if I'm gonna go to a weekly thing or an every other week thing. Right now it's just very up in the air while I experiment, so I appreciate you guys for sticking with me. I appreciate you for your patience during my absence. I know even though my last video was only 3 weeks ago, it's still been very sporadic when I post, so I'm going to do my best to grow more consistent and figure out a schedule that works best for me. So that was a really long tangent. I'm sorry. I just kind of wanted to explain to you guys what's going on and where I'm coming from, my headspace and everything like that. But let's go ahead and actually get into the main part of what this video is about. So if you are new here, at the beginning of the year, I decided I was going to start an internet book club where I read a new book every month, and then I sit down and I review it for you guys, and I talk about my thoughts, my feelings, what I liked, what I disliked, everything like that. I do have the full year planned out, so I will go ahead and I will actually link the playlist up in the eye right there. If you are interested in joining along, you can pick up at any time. We're not reading a 12 book series where you have to read them in order or anything like that. It's really just random books that I've had or wanted to read and haven't had the chance to or haven't decided to for whatever reason. So we are going to talk about July's book of the month because it is currently the 5th of August, first weekend of August. I usually get these videos up roughly the first weekend of the new month. So July's book was The Forgotten Girls by Sara Blaedel. So this book sounded super duper interesting when I picked it up. I remember that I just happened to see it at a store and I decided that I wanted to purchase it. And as I was thinking about like why I bought this book, the phrase "don't judge a book by its cover" popped into my head, which I've always found really interesting. And obviously I get that it means don't judge people by their exterior or how they appear to be, but like when actually going book shopping, like I used to go to our bookstore all the time that we have in the mall, and the way that I shopped and like looked for books was mostly the cover or the title, and if neither of those were catchy or appealing, I didn't look at the book. So I just thought that was really interesting because this one definitely caught my eye. The title, The Forgotten Girls, just really intrigued me. So I do want to go ahead and just read the back of this for you so you guys have kind of a basic understanding of what this book is about in case you did not read along with us this month. 4 days later, Louise Rick still has no answers. An unidentified woman's body was discovered in a local forest. A large, unique scar on one side of her face should have made the identification easy, but nobody has reported her missing. As the new commander of the Missing Persons Department, Louise risks involving the media by releasing a photo of the victim, hoping to find someone who knew her. Louise's gamble pays off. An older woman phones to say that she recognizes the woman as Lismette, a child she once cared for in the state mental institution many years ago. Lismette, like many other children in the institution, was abandoned by her family and branded a forgotten girl. But Louise soon discovers something more disturbing. Lismette had a twin, and both girls were issued death certificates more than 30 years ago. Aided by her friend journalist Camilla Lind, Louise finds that the investigation takes a surprising and unsettling turn when it brings her closer to her childhood home. And as she uncovers more crimes that were committed and hidden in the forest, she is forced to confront a terrible link to her own past that has been carefully concealed. So I planned the books, like which book I would read every month, kind of at random. I'm trying to think back, like I don't think I had much of a rhyme or reason for why I picked which book for which month. So this book came at a really, really good time. So the reason I say that is because about a month or two or so ago, I became introduced to a podcast called Up and Vanished, which is a podcast dedicated to the investigation of the case of Tara Grinstead. I found out about it through somebody at work who had been listening to it, and it's basically just a podcast dedicated to figuring out what happened to a woman named Tara Grinstead. It was a missing persons case that had never been solved, and it was about, when he started the podcast is a couple years old now, but when he started it was about 10 years that she had been missing, and she was from this really small town in Ocala, Georgia. Nobody knew what happened to her. Nobody could figure it out. They had actually quite a few suspects, but nothing that ever completely added up, and there was a lot of mystery and confusion surrounding the case and a lot of potential like small town cover-up. So that being said, I had just finished the podcast right before I jumped into reading this book. So I was like definitely into that like mystery solving a case mode. So it really helped. I guess my interest was like super piqued in that type of genre. So I think that really helped me get into this book. Overall, I want to say that I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I am going to give this one a 4.5 out of 5. It overall was just a really good book. I want to go into some of the things that I really loved about it and some of the things that I really didn't like about it, which will just kind of explain my overall 4.5 out of 5 rating. So one of the things that I really enjoyed about it is it was a really gripping case. Like the back, when you read it, it sounds really gripping and it sounds really interesting. I think how the case ended up playing out in the book and everything like that was super duper interesting. It didn't feel it didn't feel super predictable in that sense, and I think the twists that they throw in there were really, really good. That being said, I did catch on to who ended up being the bad guy. I don't know why I put that in quotes. He was definitely an awful person. But I ended up catching on to who was the person that they were trying to find, as far as like who the police were trying to find. So I caught on to that. I don't know if I was just like very perceptive in that sense or if it is a little more obvious. Nonetheless, even though I figured out the twist, there was way more to it than I could have guessed like at all. So I think the end ended up being super duper gripping. It was really interesting in that sense. And there's also kind of like two mysteries that are going along. There's the mystery of the case that Louise is trying to solve, but there's also this case of what happened to her, because she's very secluded about her past, and you can tell that something really awful has happened, and she doesn't get close to people, she doesn't talk to people, everything like that. So there was also the mystery of what happened in her life to make her like this. The other thing that I really liked about this book is this is definitely a more mature book. The subject matter and what is discussed and how they describe it is very, very mature. So I definitely do not recommend this for children. I would say really anyone probably like 16 and above is probably the best people to read this, because there were some really dark moments in the story. Because of the mature content and the way it was handled and the way it was written, that appealed more to me, just because as I discussed in my last video review, my last book review, I'm getting to a point where the preteen teen books aren't really like my main focus. Like that's not what's targeting me anymore. So like a lot of the teeny bop romances just aren't as intriguing for me. So for this one to be a much more mature, kind of dark and twisted book was a really good read for me. It felt way more interesting. I was more compelled to read it. So overall, the book was really good. The story was really good. I really enjoyed it. I want to just touch on a couple of the things that I didn't particularly care for. The first one is there are some really predictable points in it. There was a romance in there that I knew from like the first chapter that was going to happen. And then it was very left open at the end. There is actually a second book. I did not realize that this was going to be a series, but there is a second book called The Killing Forest, which I am definitely going to pick up because I enjoyed this one so much. So I don't know if they're going to close some of those ends more in the second book, but I didn't feel it was fully necessary for that romance to take place. It did feel kind of predictable, and it felt like almost a cheap toss-in. But that was just how I was reading it. But I'm getting to the point where like not every story needs a romance. And I just feel like throwing one in for the sake of throwing one in isn't necessary. And maybe that's not what the writer was intending to do with it. Maybe with reading the second book, the overall romance will make sense. And like I said, you know, the main character, Louise, she's very closed off and secluded. So maybe the romance was supposed to be more of like a character development thing, but that's just not how I took it, how I interpreted it. It just felt like a cheap toss-in that I didn't particularly care for. So the other thing that I don't dislike this, it just made it harder for me to read, is this book does not take place in America. It takes place in Denmark, and I actually just realized that looking in it, it does say it is translated by, so I wonder if this was originally not written in English. So some of the writing and like the overall culture of the country was a little bit harder for me to wrap my head around, because I don't know a lot about Denmark. I've heard it's a beautiful country, but that's about all I really know. I don't know much culturally about them and everything like that. So there were just times where it was harder for me to understand, and therefore harder for me to grip into. Now that being said, I don't think that we shouldn't read books about like other countries, other cultures, everything like that. Like I think that is very, very an important thing to do. I just, without having that background, and maybe I should have done more research, but without having that background, I felt a little lost and a little confused at times. So that was just something that I felt lost with. The final thing, and again, this isn't something that like I dislike about it, it's more, it just made it harder for me to read, is I retain only certain parts of information, and so a lot of this book takes place over, like the investigation, like what they're looking into goes back many, many years, and so they're looking back in history, and so therefore the years kept really throwing me. Like they would give years like 1970 and 1983, and then I would try and like figure out how long it's been since what's happening in this book, and I actually don't know if this book ever gives a firm time frame from when it's taking, like when it takes place. I'm guessing it was published in 2000. 2015 it looks like. So I'm guessing like somewhere in the 2010s is when it takes place, but I kept getting like confused and thrown off by the dates and the years that they were tossing around. I also kept getting like really thrown off by how old the main character, Louise Rick, was. Louise, I think it's like technically pronounced Louise, but I've been saying Louise, sorry. Louise, I'm very like, I kept getting thrown off. I think she's supposed to be 38, from what I was gathering, based on like time it gives, but I don't know, I kept getting lost, I kept getting confused by it, and it just kept throwing me. So like every time I would get lost or confused, it would pull me from the story and I'd have to like think about it and then re-get into it. But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think they did a really good job of giving you a really, really fresh plot. Now, I don't read a lot of like thriller mystery books, so maybe this is predictable to some people, but to me, I felt very intrigued by it, and especially like the ending takes a very, very dark turn, and really opens up the sequel, which like I said is called The Killing Force, that I'm very excited to read. It came out in February of 2016, so I'm gonna have to see if it's on Amazon or possibly go to my local library and rent it, because this book was just so good that I want to get into the second one. And in fact, they give you about 3 chapters of the second book like in the back of this one, and I read the first one. I didn't get a chance to finish it, but I read the first one and I'm like, okay, this just sounds super strange, but super interesting. So I'm very, very excited about that. All in all, I really, really loved this book. I definitely recommend this one. The last couple months have been a little bit harder books to get into, so I'm really glad that I had such a great one that I really, really loved and enjoyed so immensely. I would definitely say if you enjoy like a murder, well, I guess technically there was a murder, like a murder mystery thriller, if that is your type of genre, definitely check out The Forgotten Girls by Sara Blaedel. So for the month of August, we are going to be reading P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han. This is a sequel to the book To All the Boys I Loved Before, which again, my timing is just like super ironic, because To All the Boys I've Loved Before was actually made into a Netflix movie. I'm pretty sure it was made into a movie that comes out this month. I'm not entirely sure on the date. I'll put that on the screen right here. But To All the Boys I've Loved Before is being turned into a movie. I'm very excited to read it. I really enjoyed the first book, so this is the sequel. If you want to read the first book, you definitely can, or I suppose you could watch the Netflix special and that'll give you kind of the gist of it, and then you could jump into this one. There is actually a third book as well after this, I'm pretty sure. Say? No, doesn't say here, but I'm almost positive I've seen a third book on this. But this is going to be what we are reading for August, so if you are interested in joining along, please do so. Otherwise, I think that is about all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you also read The Forgotten Girls, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of it. And if you are excited to read August's book, please give this video a giant thumbs up. And thank you again so much for sticking with me with my sporadic, unpredictable uploading schedule. But that's definitely why you should hit that bell icon down below there so you do know when I post. But that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching, and you have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye!